I closed the door behind me. My eyes held shut and my ears ringing. The hum was surrounding me. As the door clicked into place, the hum was gone. I opened my eyes in surprise, and the door I had shut was gone. It's just a wall now. I looked around in shock. The room was... The only real difference was that there was no exit door, and the one I came through was gone. The room was identical to room 3, the same chair and lamp, but with the correct amount of shadows this time. It was that there was no exit door, and the one I came in through was gone. As I said before, I have no previous issues in terms of mental instability, but at that moment, I fell into what I now know was insanity. I didn't scream. I didn't make a sound. At first, I softly. The wall was tough, but I knew the door was there somewhere. I just knew it was. I scratched at where the door was. I clawed at the wall frantically with both hands, my nails being the skin against the wood. I fell silently to my knees, the only sound in the room, the incessant scratching against the wall. I knew it was there. The door was there. It just had to be there. I knew if I can get past this wall. Are you all right? I jumped off the ground and spun in one motion. I leaned against the wall behind me and I saw what it was that spoke to me. To this day, I regret everything. There was a little girl. She was wearing a soft white dress that went down to her ankles. She had long blonde hair to the back and white skin and blue eyes. She was the most frightening thing I'd ever seen. And I know that nothing in my life will ever be as unnerving as in her. While looking at her, I saw something else. Where she stood, I saw what looked like a man's body, only larger than normal hair. He was naked from head to toe, but his head was not human. His toes were hooves. It wasn't the devil, but at that moment, the form had the head of a ram and the snout of a wolf. It was horrifying. It was synonymous with the little girl in front of me. They were the same form. I can't really describe it, but I saw them at the same time. They shared the same spot in that room, but it was like looking at two separate dimensions. I saw the form, and when I saw the form, I saw the girl. I couldn't speak. I could barely even see. My mind was revolting against what to process. I'd been scared before in my life, and I'd never been more scared than when I was trapped in the 4th room, but that was before room 6. I just stood there staring at whatever it was that spoke to me. There was no exit. I was trapped here with... And then it spoke again. David, you should have listened. When it's the words of the little girl. But the other form spoke through my mind in a voice I won't attempt to describe. There was no other sound. The voice just kept over and over in my mind as I agreed. I didn't know what to do. I was slipping into madness, yet I couldn't take my eyes off of what was in front of me. I thought I had passed out, but the room wouldn't let me. I just wanted it to end. I was on my side, my eyes wide open, and the form staring down at me, scurrying across the floor. One of the battery-powered rats from the 2nd room. The house was toying with me. But for whatever reason, seeing that rat pulled my mind back from whatever depths it was headed, and I looked around the room. I was getting out of here. I was determined to get out of that house and think about this place again, and I knew this room was hell, and I wasn't ready to take up a residency. At first it was just my eyes that moved. I searched the walls for any kind of opening. The room wasn't that big, so it didn't take long to soak up the entire layout. The demon still taunted me, the voice growing louder as the form stayed rooted where it stood. I placed my hands on myself up to all 4, and then turned to scan the wall behind me. And I saw something I couldn't believe. The form whispering into my mind how I shouldn't have come here. I felt its breath on the back of my neck, but I refused to turn around. A large wreck etched into the wood, with a small dent chipped away in the center of it. Right in front of my eyes, I saw the large 7. I had mindlessly... I knew what it was. Room 7 was just beyond that wall, where room 5 was moments ago. I don't know how I had done it. Maybe it was just my state of mind at the time, but I had created the door. I knew I had. In my... I had scratched into the wall when I needed the most, and an exit to the next room. Room 7 was close. I knew the demon was right behind. It couldn't touch me. I closed my eyes and I placed both hands on the large 7 in front of me, and I pushed as hard as I could. The demon was now screaming in my ear. I was never leaving. It told me that this place was the end, but I wasn't going to die. I was going to live there in room 6 with it. I wasn't. I pushed and I screamed at the top of my lungs, and I knew I was going to push through the wall eventually. I clenched my eyes shut and I screamed, and the demon was gone. I was left in silence. I turned around slowly, and I was greeted by the room as it was when I entered, just a chair and a lamp. I couldn't believe it, but I didn't have time to well. I turned back to the 7, and what I saw was a door. It wasn't the one I had scratched in, but a regular door with a large 7 on it. My whole body was shaking. It took me a while to turn the knob. I just stood there for a while, staring at the door. I couldn't stay in room 6. I couldn't. But if this was only room 6, I couldn't. What 7 had in store. I must have stood there for an hour, staring at that 7. And finally, with a deep to the knob, and I opened the door. I stumbled through the door, and mentally exhausted and physically weak. The door behind me closed, and I was outside. Not like room 5, but actually outside. My eyes stung. I wanted to sneeze, and I tried, but I couldn't. I was finally out of that hell. I didn't even care about the prize that was promised. I turned and I saw that the door I just went through was the end. I walked to my car. I drove home thinking about how nice a shower sounded. I pulled up to my house, and I felt uneasy. Of leaving no one house had faded, and dread was slowly building in my stomach. I shook it off as a residual from the house, and I made my way to the front door. I entered my room. There on my bed was my cat, Baskerville. He was the first living thing that I had seen all night, and I reached to pet him. He hissed and swiped at my hand. I recoiled in shock. He never acted like that. But whatever. I mean, he's an old cat. I jumped in the shower. I got ready for what I was expecting to be asleep. After my shower, I went to the kitchen to make something to eat. I descended the stairs. I turned into the family room. What I saw would be forever burned into my mind. My parents. They were lying on the ground, naked, covered in blood. They were mutilated to near states. Their limbs were removed, placed next to their bodies. Their heads were placed in their chests, facing me, the most unsettling parts. They were smiling as though they were happy to see me. I vomited and I sobbed there in the living room. I didn't know what had happened. They didn't even live with me at the time. I was a mess. And then I saw it. A door that was never there before. A door with a large 8 scrawled on it in blood. I was still in the house. I was standing in my family room, but I was in room 7. The faces of my parents smiled wider as I realized this. They weren't my parents.